It's College Football Mornings brought to you by CampusToCanton.com. We are here for Waiver Wire Tuesday. As always, I am Austin.
And this is Colin.
And we have a few names for you guys here. End of the season. We're not going to hit you over the head with that information again, but Waiver Wire is probably getting a little bit sparser here. So a lot of these guys, a little higher ownership percentage, but we still think they should be available in a fair amount of leagues. And I think every name we have tonight can be added in limited waiver leagues, Colin, more or less. You could debate the last name, and we drop him. Maybe we'll throw a little discussion in on that. But all guys that should be rostered pretty much in any waiver format, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially at least the last one. We can debate that later, but I would probably not have him in an ad in all formats, but I understand the argument for it.
Yeah. All right. So let's just jump right into this here, Colin. First off is Luke McCaffrey, wide receiver for Rice, but we'll talk about why he's so valuable here in a second, or at least potentially so valuable. 32% rostered on Fantrax right now, but I still see him available in several of my leagues, not all of them. And the ones that are pretty active with unlimited, he's been gone for a few weeks now, but I still see him floating around out there in some places. He's seen 67 targets so far this season. He's seen no fewer than 7 targets in each of his last 5 games. He's kind of been unleashed a little more as the season's gone on here. He does not have a particularly weak schedule down the stretch here. Rice, I believe they have North Texas, UTSA, Western Kentucky, and a couple other softer matchups as well. But the big thing about Luke McCaffrey that I think is really intriguing is that he has quarterback eligibility as well. So if you're really in a pinch where you maybe only have 4 pickups, you've got 1 left, you're thinking, do I pick up a quarterback for depth? Do I pick up a wide receiver? Like, he can plug in there in some leagues if you are desperate. So that is why Luke McCaffrey is an intriguing guy here. And I think, 32%, realistically, it should probably be 60, 70, 80% there on Fantrax. I know there's some best ball leagues in that number and stuff. But yeah, go get yourself some Luke McCaffrey, who is, by the way, not to bury the lead, Christian McCaffrey's brother.
Yes, can't bury the lead there. Can't forget that part. Yeah, the big thing with him, I mean, odds are you're probably not going to want to start him in your quarterback spot if you can help it. But the positional versatility is really nice, especially with some bye weeks coming up here really soon.
There were some bye weeks in one of my leagues a couple years ago where who's that linebacker that played Sage Surratt's brother, Chaz Surratt.
Yeah,
had quarterback eligibility, and believe it or not, I had him as a linebacker, and I actually plugged him into a spot during a bye week where I just had nobody. So you never know. You never know when that can be valuable.
Right. And you touched on the week schedule. Very soft matchup this week against Charlotte. So nice ad there on that one. The other guy that we're going to highlight here, DJ Irons, QB for Akron. Surprisingly, only 9% owned on Fantrax. And this absolutely floors me because he's been a guy that I've said as a start for a couple of weeks. He's scored at least 25 fantasy points in every game since conference play has started. Now, non-conference games, kind of rough, but you got to love that Maction schedule. And then that's what he has coming down here. He's been very good ever since that started. And he also gets it done on the ground too. Dual threat guy, 22 rush attempts, 15, 8, and 23 rush attempts in his last 4 games. So we were wondering who's going to be the lead running back for Akron. It's DJ Irons. DJ Irons is the lead running back for Akron. Also throws the ball here. He's a guy that if he's out there, I am running to the waiver wire to pick him up. I can't believe we haven't mentioned him before.
I think we have, but this is another call to arms. Like, go get him, guys.
Yes.
He's floating around out there, and he's potentially a guy that some of these big name quarterbacks have tough matchups down the stretch, guys. Big Ten quarterbacks, ACC quarterbacks. So it's definitely not a bad SEC quarterbacks. Definitely not a bad thing to have a couple of these MAC guys in your holster that you can break out at any moment when needed.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the reason. That's the whole reason you draft these MAC guys. You don't take them for their early season schedule. I mean, maybe they get an FCS opponent and that's fun, but you take them for Maction time. And like you said, some of these quarterbacks have difficult schedules coming down the stretch here, especially some SEC guys. Aiden O'Connell has a rough stretch here. We got Wisconsin. He's another game against Illinois. I believe Iowa is the next one. Then it's like a rough stretch in a row. So you can absolutely plug and play DJ Irons.
Next up here, yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. You were gonna say something else there?
Nope, all you.
No. Okay. Next up here, guys, Colby Young, wide receiver, Miami, 3% rostered on Fantrax. This guy, if you've never heard the name, like I hadn't before last week either. I'm sure Colin, you hadn't either. I mean, no one
How
had really
dare
heard.
you? How dare you put words in my mouth?
I don't like to make assumptions, but I don't think I'm making you know what out of me and you here. If I had to guess,
Way to censor it for the YouTube content.
I do what I can. Young is a junior college transfer here, first year at Miami with the Hurricanes. Really big athletic kid, depending on what source you're looking at. He's somewhere between 6'3" and 6'5". He's over 200 pounds. Started at Lackawanna Community College near the Scranton area of Pennsylvania, and they have produced some NFL talent. They actually typically are a funnel to Penn State, so I'm actually really surprised he didn't end up there. Jaquan Brisker, for instance, is a guy as of late that has come through Lackawanna to Penn State and then to the pros. But enough about Lackawanna. Colby Young, 28 targets in his last 3 games. They really didn't unleash him until then, but he's quickly become the focal point here of this offense. Several hundred yards, multiple touchdowns over his past few games. And he's got a very soft schedule down the stretch here, Colin. They play Virginia, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Clemson, and Pitt. I think all of those games, the games that they're favored in, he potentially is the reason they'll be scoring. And then Clemson probably be behind the whole game. That's great for him there as well. And this is a guy where I haven't really sat down to watch him yet, but he's very intriguing. Like we talked about, who's the Miami wide receiver that's going to step up? It could be him. Does he have Devy upside? I don't know. Mike on Back to Devy seems to think so. They've talked about him over there on that show. Go check that out if you want to hear a lengthier discussion on him. But I mean, there's untapped potential, I think, in this one more than any of the others, where I have a league that we get 2 pickups a year, 2 pickup windows a year after week 4, after week 8. So this is one of those weeks. And I'm oddly tempted just because he's kind of the mystery box to make him my guy that I add here. The upside and everything, the potential points for the season, I think are really intriguing to me. So all that to be said, with Colby Young, 3% rostered, go out and get him. I think he could potentially be a guy that he's league winner might be a strong word, but you might start him every week down the stretch here.
Yeah, like you said, he's kind of become the focal point of the passing attack here the past couple games, and he's gonna have there's some potential Devy upset there. I have not looked in that either. You were not wrong in assuming that, so I'm very intrigued to look at him as well. Next guy we have here, Sam Wiglusz, wide receiver for Ohio, 31% owned on roster on Fantrax there, so higher ownership than we normally have on here. But I do see him floating around out there in some leagues, and he has been on fire the last couple of weeks. 17.4, 23.9, 33.4, 16.6, and 25 fantasy points in his last matchups here. And then he's been a target monster too. 11, 7, 7, 11, and 7. So he's getting the targets. He's got that Maction play that we were talking about with DJ Irons. You love that schedule here. Maction's going to be starting up next week too. So tune in on Tuesdays and don't forget to set your lineups early. But Sam Wiglusz is a guy that could be huge down the stretch for you here.
No, completely agree. And yeah, higher rostership again here, but I picked him up in 2 different leagues last week. So, I mean, he's definitely floating around some places. Go get him if he's out there. Last one here for today, guys. This is the one that we can debate a little bit, whether he should be considered an in all formats type guy. But Miles Marshall, wide receiver at Miami of Ohio. Transfer kid, came in from Indiana, I believe, previously. Big-bodied guy, 6'4", 205 pounds. Miami of Ohio has been very disappointing to start this year. But a lot of that has to do with them missing Brett Gabbert, their starting quarterback. And yes, that is Blaine Gabbert's brother. So I'll answer that question so you don't have to go Google it. He's been out. He came back last week, and Miami, they didn't score a ton, but they moved the ball much more effectively, and they passed the ball pretty decently as well. Marshall, in this game, he got 9 targets, had 8 catches, 103 yards, didn't score, but a really, really intriguing stat line. If you look at Mac Hippenhammer's stat line last year when he was kind of the deputy in this offense, and then this year stepped in as the leading man, down the stretch last year with Brett Gabbert there, Mac Hippenhammer had 7 targets, 9 targets, 7 targets, 4 targets, and 15 targets. That second guy here can be very, very valuable because they like to chuck it around. And Marshall's 1% roster on Fantrax. So this is one where it's debatable. If you have unlimited, like I think for sure you should. This is a guy that you churn that bottom of that roster. But he's a really interesting guy, and I think overall, I don't think he supplants Hippenhammer because Hippenhammer had 14 targets this week, but I think they can both eat here in this passing attack.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw it with Hippenhammer last year, like you said, but Hippenhammer will be the primary guy there. But the return of Brett Gabbert was huge. Smith, the quarterback beforehand, much more of a running quarterback. So his offense has been pretty disappointing all year so far. But Gabbert unexpectedly returning, they kind of thought he was the assumption I was operating under was that he was done for the year. I did not see anything that was indicating he was going to be back next week ahead of the game. But this is big for that whole offense. So big for Hippenhammer, but also big for Miles Marshall, the number 2 in that passing offense.
Yeah, great surprise there. Colin, one more name here?
Nope.
No, you don't have any more names?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I stole your last one here. All right. That's going to do it for tonight here, guys. Make sure you keep tuning in here to College Football Mornings. We've got something for you every day of the week, whether that be prize picks, Friday Night Lights, the high school football, all that good stuff. Check out the podcast channel and then everything else going on over here at YouTube as well. And of course, campstocanton.com. Until next time, guys, I'm Austin.
And this is Colin.
Have a good one.